Saudi Health Ministry has completed its preparations to provide medical care for pilgrims who will gather on the plains of Mount Arafat to perform the Hanukkah of the Hajj pilgrimage on Thursday, the 9th day of Dhul Hijjah. Health facilities in Arafat have been equipped with general clinics staffed by family doctors, internal consultants and nurses specialized in intensive care, as well as facilities equipped to deal with sunstroke and heat stress. There will be also a mobile hospital in Arafat and mobile clinics in Muzdalifah throughout the day of Arafat to serve the pilgrims until their departure. Saudi Foreign Ministry Prince Faisal bin Farhan bin Abdullah held talks in Rabat with his Moroccan counterpart Nasser Bourita. Speaking to the media, Prince Faisal expressed Riyadh's keenness to boost the close ties with Rabat through constant coordination in all fields and in order to achieve their common interests. He added the talks reflected the extent of the agreement between Saudi Arabia and Morocco for the challenges facing the Arab world. The United Arab Emirates has outlined its economic strategy to face the coronavirus outbreak and said it is based on two main phases. According to the Undersecretary of the Ministry of Finance, Yunus Haji Al Khouri, the first is on the short term. He said it is the gradual opening of the economy and business activities while taking into consideration the imposed health measures and the provision of huge economic support and stimulus plans to the most affected sectors. The Kuwaiti Directorate General of the Civil Aviation announced that airlines operating at Kuwait International Airport will start commercial flights to 20 countries worldwide on the 1st of August. The airlines that will start operating are those of the UAE, Bahrain, Oman, Lebanon, Qatar, Jordan, Egypt, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Ethiopia, the United Kingdom, Turkey, Iran, Nepal, Switzerland, Germany, Azerbaijan, the Philippines and India, said DGCA Director of the Department of Air Transport, Abdullah Rajhi. He also said that airline schedules and flight times will be announced shortly, calling on all travellers to follow all health procedures and guidelines. Socialist Party leader Walid Jumblat said Lebanon needs a new prime minister to help it exit a deep economic and financial crisis. The newspaper said Jumblat was referring to remarks by Diab in which he appeared to criticize French Foreign Minister Jean-Yves Le Drian for linking assistance to Lebanon with enacting the reforms and an IMF deal. Jordan's King Abdullah issued a royal decree to hold a parliamentary election with the date to be set within the next 10 days by an independent election commission. The election will be held at a time the aid-dependent country grapples with economic contraction with the impact of COVID-19 amid heightened worries about any unilateral Israeli move to annex territory in the occupied West Bank. Officials fear that annexation would bury the prospect of a viable Palestinian state and eventually bring a settlement to the decades-old conflict at the expense of Jordan, a country where many people are descendants of Palestinian refugees whose families left after the creation of Israel in 1948. The Lebanese government is preparing to file a complaint with the United Nations against Israel over the latest border escalation linking the security clash to Tel Aviv's attempt to amend the tasks of the international peacekeeping forces operating in the south and to change the rules of engagement with Lebanon. A cautious calm prevailed in the southern region on Tuesday following shelling in the occupied Jaffa farms. Tel Aviv said it thwarting a Hezbollah attack, while the movement asserted that it was unilateral shooting. The head of the General Intelligence Service, Major General Abbas Kamel, landed in Khartoum on a brief one-day visit to discuss with Sudanese officials the latest developments of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. Kamel transferred a verbal message from Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi to the head of the Transitional Sovereign Council, Lieutenant General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, on bilateral relations and ways to support and develop them, and the enhancement of the common interests between the two countries. For his part, Burhan expressed his thanks and appreciation to the Egyptian intelligence chief for the visit and conveyed his greetings to the Egyptian leadership. Former Lebanese Prime Minister Saad al-Hariri and his Al-Mustaqbal movement await the verdict of the Special Tribunal for Lebanon in the case of his father's February 2005 assassination. The movement looks forward to the 7th of August to be a day of truth and justice for Lebanon and a day of punishment for the criminals. The ex-Prime Minister informed the bloc of the decision to postpone the third Mustaqbal Movement Congress over the coronavirus outbreak and stressed that it will be held when conditions are ripe. The Southern Transitional Council abandoned its declaration of self-rule in southern Yemen and pledged to implement the Riyadh Agreement with the legitimate government interests between the two countries. For his part, Burhan expressed his thanks and appreciation to the Egyptian intelligence chief for the visit and conveyed his greetings to the Egyptian leadership. Former Lebanese Prime Minister Saad al-Hariri and his Al-Mustaqbal movement await the verdict of the Special Tribunal for Lebanon in the case of his father's February 2005 assassination. The movement looks forward to the 7th of August to be a day of truth and justice for Lebanon and a day of punishment for the criminals. The ex-Prime Minister informed the bloc of the decision to postpone the third Mustaqbal Movement Congress over the coronavirus outbreak and stressed that it will be held when conditions are ripe. The Southern Transitional Council abandoned its declaration of self-rule in southern Yemen and pledged to implement the Riyadh Agreement with the legitimate government, announced spokesperson Nizar Haytham. The STC announces that it is abandoning its self-rule declaration to allow the implementation of a power-sharing deal known as the Riyadh Agreement. He acknowledged the announcement came after Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates exerted pressure to row back on their decision and to ensure the success of the two countries in implementing the Riyadh Agreement. UN Special Envoy for Yemen Martin Griffiths called for immediate and urgent steps for de-escalation in Ma'rib and noted the increase in the number of ceasefire violations in Hodeidah during his monthly briefing to the UN Security Council about efforts to broker an agreement between the Yemeni government and Houthi militias for a nationwide ceasefire. Griffiths again raised the alarm about the immense environmental and humanitarian threat posed by the Safra tanker. Also, the United Nations envoy called on Yemeni parties to make the compromises necessary to reach an agreement on a joint final text that meets the aspirations of the Yemeni people. Russian officials rejected accusations that Moscow is spreading disinformation about the coronavirus pandemic in the US. They described the reports as fake, saying they are conspiracy theories and a persistent phobia. US officials said that Russian intelligence service were using a trio of English-language websites to spread disinformation about the coronavirus pandemic, seeking to exploit a crisis that the US is struggling to contain ahead of the presidential election in November. Yemenis expressed cautious optimism after the government and separatists accepted a Saudi-brokered proposal to accelerate the implementation of the Riyadh Agreement. Leading figures also praised the kingdom for its pivotal role in sponsoring and mediating tough talks between the two sides that had led to the formation of a new government and the ending of hostilities in southern Yemen. Yemen's President Abdurrabbu Mansour Hadi issued presidential decrees mandating incumbent Prime Minister Ma'in Abdel Malik Said to form a new government and for the appointment of a new governor and security director for Aden province. The Spanish government has attempted to reassure tourists that the nation is a safe destination. Despite recent increases in coronavirus cases in some areas, the tourism industry in Spain has been hit hard by the COVID-19 pandemic. Hotels, resorts and restaurants have been working to restore confidence by implementing safety measures and precautions designed to protect visitors. One person in the United States died about every minute from COVID-19 on Wednesday, as the national death toll surpassed 150,000, the highest in the world. The United States recorded 1,461 new deaths, the highest one-day increase since 1,484 on May 27th. U.S. coronavirus deaths are rising at their fastest rate in 2 months and have increased by 10,000 in the past 11 days.